Welcome everyone. My name is Karolina and I work as a UX researcher in PixelAnt Games. And I am very lucky that my work combines both my biggest passion and my education, because I am a psychologist by education, and one of my greatest passion is, of course, gaming. And what I love about my job is how effectively psychological knowledge can be used to create games that will best meet the needs of our players. So today I will tell you how to use the knowledge of color psychology to make our game affect players the way we want it to affect them. And there are several reasons why game developers should know the psychology of colors. And in my opinion, there are two that are the most important. So first of all, the appropriate use of colors and their combinations will make our game look nice and aesthetic. And let's think about what do people like, because people like harmony, people like symmetry, people also like appropriate proportions, and they like elegance. So to sum up in simple words, people just like things that look nice. People actively seek for beauty, and beauty attracts them. And beauty is also created by colors. And looking at beautiful color palette evokes pleasure and other positive emotions. So if we choose the colors well, the game will look nicer, and consequently the experience will be more pleasant for the players. And there is a greater probability that players will be interested in the game, for example, just after screening the screenshots. And on the screen you can see Greece, which is considered as one of the most beautiful games. And the second reason why developers should know the psychology of colors is user experience. Because appropriate use of colors will make the entire game more intuitive to the player, and thanks to this, players will have to spend less energy to understand and learn the game, so they will get involved faster. And if they get involved faster, they are more likely to not abandon the game. There are some basic relationships in color psychology, and it's worth to know them because all the conclusions I will talk about later come from them. Color is nothing more than the reflected light that we see, and each color has a different wavelength of light, and these light waves affect on our physiology. They stimulate us or they calm us down. And colors that have a longer wavelength are warmer, so the warmer colors will be red, orange and yellow. And colors that have shorter wavelength are cooler, and it's, for example, blue. And the basic relationships I mentioned before are as follows. The longer the light wave, and therefore the warmer the color, the more stimulating it is. And the shorter the wavelength, so the cooler the color, the more calming it is. And color combinations also affect us because contrasting colors stimulate, while gradient calms us down. And knowing these relationships, we can shape players' behavior. And research has shown, among other things, that color influences players' tendency to compete. And in 2008, a study was conducted in which players played a multiplayer shooter game, and they were divided into two teams, so that each team had players with a similar skill level. And one team's avatars were dressed in red, and second in blue. And what were the results? It turned out that the red team won significantly more often than the blue team. And it was probably related to the stimulating effect of red. But why does that happen? I mentioned before that red is the most stimulating color, and this means that when we see red, our body reacts with excitement. So the heart beats faster, blood pressure increases, breathing speeds up, etc. And please note that the reactions I have just mentioned for example, the faster heartbeat, are reactions that appear in our body when we are stressed or when we are in danger. And in that situation, we have to act quickly to avoid the threat. And what is very interesting is that our brain works in both directions. And that means that the first possibility is that if a trigger occurs, such as danger or stress, the body is stimulated, the heart beats faster, and so on. But there is also a second possibility, and it is when our body experiences reactions that indicates arousal, for example, higher blood pressure. Our brain will interpret it in such way that it will think that we are in arousing situation, for example, in stress or under stress or in danger. And this is most likely what happened with the red team. So because they saw red more often, their body reacted with arousal, and their brains interpreted this in such way that they may be in danger, and therefore they should act quickly and decisively and even take risks to escape from danger. And red players were therefore motivated to compete, which is why they won more often. Other research has shown that colors affect our ability to recall objects. It turned out that it would be easier for us to remember that an object was red or yellow than it was blue or green. And it is also probably because red and yellow are colors which are more stimulating, so could indicate danger, and so they are worth remembering. So if we want players to remember some object in game more easily, it's best idea to make them yellow or red. And colors also influence how players will complete the tasks that are set before them. But research has shown that both red and blue affect task performance, but in completely different ways. So blue stimulates you to perform tasks in a creative way, encourages you to think outside the box and look for original solutions. And for this reason, blue is perfect for designing locations in puzzle games. And on the screen you can see the Portal game, where cool colors with numerous elements of blue dominate. And red also stimulates you to perform tasks, but the goal-oriented ones, where you need to act quickly and specifically. And for example, in the game Tomb Raider, which you see on the screen, when Lara is close to death, the edges of the screen are covered with blood, so they are red. And apart from the fact that bloody screen is obviously associated with danger, seeing the red will also stimulate the player on a physiological way. And seeing red will stimulate them to take quick and specific actions to save Lara from death. Color is the first feature of an object that we notice, and we will notice much faster than an object is, for example, yellow or green, than how, for example, it smells or what is its shape or how it tastes like. And it is related to evolution, because thanks to color recognition, our ancestors could quickly tell, for example, whether a fruit is ripe or not. Seeing a brightly colored animals, they knew it's better not to approach them because they may be dangerous. So actually we can see that quick color recognition served for survival. And for this reason, color is great for directing players' attention. And there are some colors that attract attention more than others. And there are, of course, warm colors such as red, orange, and yellow. And because they are stimulating and they trigger physiological responses similar to those that occur in our body when we are in danger, our attention will be automatically directed towards them. And it's because our brain needs to quickly check what causes the danger-like reactions in the body and react if it is necessary. So, if we want to draw players' attention to an object in the game world, it is worth making it red, yellow, or orange. And contrasting colors, as I mentioned before, also have a stimulating effect, and therefore they also attract attention. And please note that in the world of nature, many plants and animals warn against the fact that they are poisonous or otherwise dangerous by their contrasting colors. Because our brain understands that message very intuitively. And a very good example, in my opinion, of using colors to control players' attention is Mirror's Edge. It's a very dynamic game where the gameplay consists mainly of fast movement and parkour. And the creators of Mirror's Edge marked in red those objects in the game world that can be used for parkour. And thanks to that, there were red, players could notice them immediately and can use them quickly. So they do not have to stop and the gameplay does not lose the dynamics. And notice that contrasts are also used here, because the rest of the environment is kept in cool colors, such as blue, gray, or white, which further increases the noticeability of red objects. But actually, a question may arise here, because before I kept talking about the fact that contrast and red are automatically associated with danger in our brain. So we should actually be careful with such objects and not approach them. But we should remember that players, apart from being animals and apart from their brains react automatically to certain stimuli, they are also conscious beings. And the creators of Mirror's Edge clearly indicated that direct objects are objects that must be approached and must be used. So even if on a physiological way, even if on a physiological level, players may associate red objects with danger, on a conscious level, they know that they should use those objects because they will not hurt them and because they are actually quite useful. And so far, I have talked about how colors affect us evolutionary and physiologically, but colors also have a cultural impact on us. That means that during our lives, we learn certain meanings of colors in accordance with our culture. And because of that, we automatically interpret them. So now I will discuss the meaning of certain colors in Western European culture. So black in pop culture has come to symbolize power, luxury, elegance, and professionalism, but it also can mean neutrality and simplicity. And because it's a very serious color, can be also associated with distance or even death or sadness. So in game design, black works well for gloomy locations and for characters that are supposed to be associated with power and elegance. White is a symbol of purity and innocence, and it is also associated with new beginning, harmony, and honesty. And just like black, it's a symbol of minimalism and simplicity. And it also sometimes brings to mind divinity, transcendence, or even God, especially when it's combined with gold. And it is also the most neutral color of all the colors. Purple is a color that rarely occurs in nature, which is why it is associated with uniqueness, magic, and mystery. And dark purple is often the color of high-ranked people or the color of dark magic. And it is also very common in gaming culture that, along with red and green, purple is the color of necromancy. In most games, the health bar is red and the mana bar is blue. And this is partly due to cultural conditioning and partly to the effect of colors on our physiology. And for the health bar, which is usually red, red will attract our attention, which is good in the situation because the health bar is something that we should look at often. And culturally, red is associated with blood, and good blood supply to the body is associated with health. And mana, on the other hand, is something magical and extraordinary. And blue is a color that, just like purple, rarely occurs in nature. So it is also associated with uniqueness and magic, but at the same time it has no connections with black magic or necromancy, like purple. And that's why blue is perfect for designing mana bar. And of course, it's not like 100% of games have these exact colors for mana and for health, but it doesn't mean it's a wrong approach. Because the health bar may be, for example, green, and when it decreases, its empty part may be red. And this is also a good solution because green is generally associated with things that are good and health is good, while red is associated with danger, as I mentioned. And when our characters' health level decreases, they are in danger. And additionally, the contrast between green and red attracts attention, which is also very beneficial in that situation. So as you can see, there are some established solutions in this regard, and they usually work very well. Because it is something that player knows from other games and don't have to learn this. However, it doesn't mean that you cannot break these patterns and try something different in game design. It might be more difficult than using known patterns, but if it is done in accordance with knowledge of color psychology and it fits well with the rest of design, such as the rest of interface or surroundings, etc., this can also be a good solution. And as I said, color is the first feature of an object that we notice, and that's why it's great for giving players feedback. And both physiologically and culturally, we understand that red means danger, or that it means that you have done something wrong. Yellow and orange mean that you need to be careful, and green means that you did something right or that there is safe. And we taught these relationships from an early age, for example, even in traffic lights. And that's why we understand it intuitively, and it also works well in games too. Let's look at a very famous game called The Sims. And in this game, the needs of our Sims are symbolized by colored bars. And if a need is met and everything is well, the bar is green. If the need is not completely satisfied, but it doesn't pose a threat to the Sim's life, but we still should pay attention to it, it's yellow. And when the need is deprived and poses a threat to the Sim, the bar is red. And in many games with star elements, yellow is warning color, and it warns you that you are about to be detected. And it works quite well. For example, in Cyberpunk, yellow beams emitted by cameras warn the player before entering a field where they can be detected. And to sum up, it is worth giving feedback in colors, because player will see, for example, a red or green visual signal much faster than they will read, for example, textual feedback. And both single colors and their combinations influence the emotions and mood of the players. And as I have mentioned many times, red is associated with what stimulates us. So it will be perfect for creating an atmosphere of threat. But actually, it's not just danger or stress that excite us, because we can also become aroused in situation of, for example, sexual tension, or in the situation when we just feel that we are full of energy. And on the screen you can see the game Succubus, which creates an atmosphere of danger and sexuality by using a lot of red. Blue is the most calming color, so it is perfect when we want to induce relaxation in our players. And this is a color that will be perfect for relaxing games, for games that focus more on exploration or, for example, a story than on a combat. And on the screen you can see the game Abzu, which is focused on exploration. And green is actually a very interesting color because research has shown that depending on the shade, green evokes the most positive and most negative emotions. And lush green, which is associated with nature and plants, evokes the most positive emotions and has rather relaxing effects. However, yellowish or brownish rotten green is associated with rot and poison and evokes the most negative emotions. Also, this is next to the purple, it's a color of necromancy. And not only single colors, but also their combinations influence the mood of players. And on the screen you can see the color wheel, which is very helpful tool in choosing the right color palette, because we can easily check what type of palette a given combination color is. So the first color palette is the achromatic color palette, which consists only black, white and shades of gray. And it is a palette that mainly evokes a mood of depression and sadness. A monochromatic palette is one color, but in different shades. So it is ideal for enhancing a given mood. For example, if we choose a monochromatic palette in shade of blue, the mood will be as relaxing as possible. If we choose monochromatic palette in shades of purple, it will be as magical as possible, etc. Analogous colors are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, and they allow you to combine several moods. For example, combination of green, blue and purple will create, for example, an atmosphere of relaxation, magic and positive emotions. And analogous color palette is also objectively the most harmonious and the most beautiful color palette. And on the screen you can see Ori and the Blind Forest, where dominant colors are green, purple, and green and blue. Triad colors based on isosceles triangle are two colors next to that lies next to each other on the color wheel, and one that lies on the opposite. And it is less harmonious and less pretty than analogous colors, but it still helps to maintain harmony and can be used when, for example, we want to pay special attention to a certain element, or when we want to mix more distant moods, like, for example, relaxation, but with a bit of caution. And it is worth remembering that to maintain harmony using that color palette, two similar colors should be dominant, and the contrasting color should appear less often. Contrasting colors lie opposite each other on the color wheel, and they're great for marking dichotomies and differences. And for example, in cyberpunk, contrasting colors emphasize the diversity of Night City. And we need to remember that not everyone can distinguish colors, because some people suffer from vision disorders where they cannot distinguish colors. So to make sure that colorblind players can also enjoy our game, it's worth checking what our game will look like for people with color blindness. And Unity and Unreal Engine have built in special filters that allow you to check how your game will look like for players with color blindness. And if it turns out that some elements, for example, some elements of interface are hard to distinguish for people with color blindness, it's worth considering changing these colors. However, you cannot always change the colors, because in some situations it could be very confusing to the players. Then the safest solution is to ensure that colors are not the only feature that distinguishes given elements from each other. For example, you can make them differ also in shape or in some other feature. And it was done quite well in a puzzle game, Chromagun, where key elements that need to be distinguished from each other are marked not only by colors but also by symbols. And what is interesting, these symbols, just like colors, combine to create secondary symbols of secondary colors. So we are approaching the end of the presentation, but there is one very important thing I want to tell you. So it is worth remembering that the rules I have presented here do not have to be strictly adhered to. Because when we look at this picture, red dominates here, there is a bit of contrast, so as I said, it will create a sense of danger. But if we look at this screenshot from the Firewatch, then we see that red, orange and yellow dominate here too. And yet the mood in the screenshot is completely different than the mood in the previous one. And it is firstly because the colors here are blend more gently into each other. They are not so contrasting, so this color palette will be more calming. But secondly, and more importantly, the mood is created not only by colors, but also by other elements. Because when you look at this screen, we have a sunset here, which probably everybody of us knows, and it is rather associated, it rather has good associations in our mind. And we have nice trees, which are associated with nature, and therefore the tone of this screenshot is completely different than in the previous one. So let's remember that it's not just colors that influence the player, because other elements that we put in the game are also very important. The context is important, and also very important is what we communicate to the players on a conscious level, just like it was in the Mirror's Edge, for example. But it is, of course, certainly worth ensuring that all the elements in the games, including colors, are as consistent as possible, and that they make the game intuitive. So thank you very much for your attention. Do you have any questions? Okay, so if not, thank you very much again for your attention.